But with opening day 3 weeks away, great time to get my MLB betting guide. You can find that over on Amazon, the 2020 MLB Betting Preview, I believe it's called over there. You can also download the PDF for free over at BangTheBook.com. I did the Deep Dive podcast with Whale Capper and Andy last night. That was a ton of fun. That's making the rounds here around Twitter this morning. Whale and Andy, for those that don't know, for those that haven't listened to the Deep Dive, those are two of the best guys in this business, not just them personally as human beings, but they do such a phenomenal job of studying and understanding and researching the industry and then bringing that to everybody, to the masses, through that awesome podcast that they do. So it was an honor to be on the Deep Dive last night. Like I said, that's making the rounds here on Thursday, but please check that out. I think it was a really, really good segment, a whole lot of fun talking with those guys. I think you're going to take a lot of good information from that segment and some good information from the Wager Talk videos I did last week as well. Taking a look at some season win total bets that I like, some season win total previews, then also some thoughts on betting spring training baseball. Aside from baseball, I'm doing conference tournament previews over at BangTheBook.com. This week, I've also written a UFC preview, a golf preview for the Arnold Palmer, NASCAR preview for this weekend at Phoenix. So very, very busy. Lots of content over at BangTheBook.com. Make sure you check all that out. Finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. We got two more divisions left to go here on the Bettor's Box for the 5 and Fly segment. 5 minutes on each of the 5 teams in this division. Today is the NL Central. Monday's show will be the National League West. Then obviously I'll have plenty of stuff to talk about in the lead up to the season otherwise, but let's go ahead and start here with today's edition of the Bettor's Box and that 5 and Fly, starting with the Chicago Cubs. Their season win total here, 85.5. And I mentioned this a lot in my preview. You know, when you look at the Chicago Cubs from last year, they were a 90-win team by Pythagorean win-loss. They were an 89-win team by base runs, 88-win team by third-order win percentage, but they finished 84-78. And we always try to figure out, and this is something that I always try to make it a point to do, I try to figure out why teams fell short of their projections based on the alternate standings. Is it something where they ran really bad in one-run games? It's something where they ran, perhaps really good in one-run games. Was it a cluster luck situation? I've talked about that concept before, introduced by Joe Pita in his fantastic book, Trading Bases. Is it something where, a team was just really, really good with runners in scoring position or really, really bad with runners in scoring position? And did that have an impact on how things went for their seasons? Well, when we look at the Chicago Cubs, they went 2-10 over their last 12 games. That's it. That's all it is to their season. They went 2-10, over the last 12 games at the absolute worst possible time. If you go 2-10 in the middle of the season, something like that, people may kind of say, okay, what's going on with this team? But when you go 2-10 to close out the regular season, the sky is falling. And this is a Cubs team that, again, on pace for anywhere from 88 to 90 wins, on pace for 88 wins if they had, just finished up the regular season in decent form, and their season win total comes out 85.5. And what we get here is we get some recency bias because the Cubs fell short of expectations, fell short of the usual standard that they have, and they had a terrible offseason. Owner Tom Ricketts was crying poor. And you've had a few teams crying poor that really shouldn't have been over the course of this offseason, but that permeates the betting market. That sort of starts to create the narrative about some of these teams. And the narrative right now about the Cubs is not very good. They didn't spend money this offseason. They didn't live up to expectations last year. Even though if you take a deeper look and you see that 2-10 finish where they lost 5 one-run games in that span, that played a big role. That played a big part as to why they struggled late in the year. Now, look, I understand that there are worries about this team, and there should be. I think the dynamics with David Ross are kind of interesting here. I do think that to a degree, the Cubs quit on Joe Madden last year. They had enough of Joe Madden's bullshit, and they just sort of were ready to be done. And, they lost some close games down the stretch, but they also just didn't play particularly well. The offense wasn't necessarily great. I think they were just kind of done. And we saw that change. We saw the Cubs hire David Ross. I don't know about David Ross here, because keep in mind, David Ross is not that far removed from playing. He was on the 2016 World Series team and played with a lot of these guys. This team is not that much different than that World Series winning team. John Lester's still around. Kyle Hendricks still around. A lot of the offensive pieces are still around. Is David Ross a friend, or is David Ross a leader? And those lines are very, very blurred right now, I think. So I'm curious to see how those dynamics play out with the Cubs, in particular early on in the season here. But look, this was an offense that underperformed last year. 13th in batting average, 8th in on-base percentage, 9th in slugging percentage. That shouldn't happen with the talent on this team. You've got way too many good offensive pieces. A Javier Baez, a Chris Bryant, an Anthony Rizzo, a Kyle Schwarber, even guys like David Boate and Ian Happ. There's too much talent here for this offense to perform to that level where they're kind of a borderline top 10 offensive team. I think that should change. Now, on the pitching side, you've got some concerns. Because last year, their 5 primary starters, Jose Quintana, Cole Hamels, John Lester, Yu Darvish, and Kyle Hendricks, they started 150 of the 162 games for this team. So you do worry about that. I always find it very difficult to believe that teams will replicate good health that they had the previous year. So that is a worry. John Lester's getting older. The command is starting to wane. Jose Quintana's starting to lose it a little bit. But Yu Darvish, big second half, Cy Young candidate for me. I like Kyle Hendricks a lot, a low ERA, high xFIP kind of guy. And those guys typically don't get valued properly in the betting markets, to say the least. There are big worries with the bullpen. 4 of the top 5 guys in appearances are gone. You need a lot more from Craig Kimbrell. The Cubs don't have the ceiling that the Cincinnati Reds have, but they may be the safest pick to win the National League Central. And I do lean over here with this team, but this is not one that I have bet for the upcoming 2020 season. One that I have bet the over on. I got 83.5. It's now 84.5. The Cincinnati Reds. I am all in with the Cincinnati Reds. They are all in with analytics, so they are all in with me. And a lot of people really do like this Cincinnati Reds team. Some people much smarter than me got in there on their World Series futures price in the 60, 70 to 1 range very early on in the offseason. A lot of people like this team. And look, there are a lot of reasons to like this team. The Reds last year, 75 and 87, which obviously does not sound good and isn't very good, but they were only minus 10 in run differential. So they played more like an 80 and 82 team. And furthermore, their run differential in September was not very good. I think they just kind of realized, what the finish to their season was going to look like. They kind of fell off a little bit late in the year. Some of the guys that were hurt just kind of tailed off, stuff like that. So this is a team that really, over the course of the season, should have been a team with a winning record. Could very well have been a team in that wild card discussion. And you look at those advanced standings metrics. Once again, 80 and 82 by Pythagorean win-loss, 84 and 78 in base runs. And as I've mentioned before, base runs is a context-neutral environment that just looks at individual outcomes, offensively and defensively, puts together runs scored per game, runs allowed per game, then uses a Pythagorean-like formula to spit out a record based on that run differential. And the Reds were more like an 84 and 78 team, according to base runs. According to third order win percentage, they were more like an 86.5 and 75.5 type of team. Look, they should have been better. They played 57 one-run games. That was the most in Major League Baseball. And this offense was below average. This offense wasn't good enough. And when you look at Great American Ballpark, traditionally a very good offensive park, that's not going to cut it. But I think that this offense is a lot better this year. You add Nick Castellanos. You add Mike Moustakas. You add Shogo Akiyama. You get probably more from guys like Jesse Winker and Nick Senzel. Maybe you get a bounce-back year from Joey Votto. You've got guys like Aquino, guys like Suarez. they've got some really good offensive pieces here. And something else that you need to consider is that, it's not just the guys that you add, it's the guys that they replace. And last year, guys like Jose Peraza, guys like Jose Iglesias were below average offensive players, well below average offensive players. Now you add in a Castellanos, you add in a Moustakas, you add in these guys that have these higher offensive ceilings, and all of a sudden, you're talking about an offense that should be league average or better. And that may not sound like a lot to you, but a league average offense with a top 10 pitching staff wins a lot of games in Major League Baseball. And this team, in my estimation, will win a lot of games. You look at the impact of Derek Johnson. Derek Johnson, of course, was formerly the pitching coach of the Milwaukee Brewers. I'll talk about the Brewers here in a second. But in 2018, the Cincinnati Reds were 24th in ERA, 27th in FIP, 21st in XFIP, 24th in strikeout percentage, and 17th in walk rate. In 2019, they were 8th in ERA, 9th in FIP, 4th in XFIP, 4th in strikeout percentage, and 19th in walk rate. So what we see here with this Reds team is improvement. It's year-over-year improvement. Sonny Gray was elite last year. Luis Castillo, strikeout increase. He has an elite ground ball rate. If he starts to cut down on the home runs, as he did in the first half of last year, that's a guy who's a Cy Young candidate. You could find him out there in the 20 to 25 to 1 range. Anthony DeSclafani had one of the lowest WOBAs against in the second half last year. They add in Wade Miley, an extreme ground ball guy. He's paired back together with Derek Johnson. You get a full season of Trevor Bauer, who should be a lot more comfortable. Strikeout percentage increased in the second half. And you get this buy-in with analytics. You get the hirings of guys like Kyle Bodie, of Caleb Cotham, a lot of guys from that driveline baseball pipeline. They added some guys on the offensive side, too, to improve player development. When you do that, when you make these analytically savvy hires, you maximize the potential and the ability of a lot of your in-house guys. These pitching gains are here to stay. And in fact, in some areas, they could get even better. So I'm talking about a league average offense with a top 10, maybe even top 5, if everything falls into place, caliber rotation, a good bullpen anchored by Raisel Iglesias, Michael Lorenzen. Pedro Strop, 7 straight seasons with a FIP under 360 before last year. He's an above-average reliever. They've got guys like Jose De Leon. Robert Stevenson was coming on last year. The Reds have a lot of pieces and parts here. Now, they don't have a ton of minor league depth. That's the only reservation I have about this team. But this team has the highest ceiling in the division. I bet the over at 83.5. I still like it at 84.5. Really do like the Cincinnati Reds here for the upcoming season. Next up is the Milwaukee Brewers. Their season win total 83.5 here. And the first thing I noticed about the Brewers is that they are a very top-heavy team. You've got Christian Yelich, perennial MVP candidate, gets that extension here this week, which I think looks very good for both the team and the player. Yelich signed a below-market deal with his first contract extension. Now he gets paid a little bit less than what he's worth, but he's able to recoup some of that money that he lost with that first contract. I love Keston Hiura. Keston Hiura should be one of the top second basemen off the boards in your fantasy drafts here. Elite contact metrics, and now he's there for the full season as the Brewers are done playing service time games with him. You've got Brandon Woodruff. You've got Josh Hader, the 2 best pitchers on this staff. The question is, what else do you have with the Milwaukee Brewers? I think Lorenzo Cain is a guy that can bounce back. Now, he will turn 34 in April, and that obviously worries me with his defensive metrics, with his legs. But his contact metrics were actually pretty good last year. So, offensively, his profile should be a little bit better. I'm optimistic about him coming into the season. Offensively, though, you've got a lot of platoon guys. You've got some flexible multi-position guys with an Eric Sogard, with a Brock Holt. You got some platoon guys like Avisail Garcia, Justin Smoke. This is what the Brewers do. They do what small market teams do. Try to find those buy low types of guys, the guys that can play a lot of different positions, guys that excel on one side of the platoon. It's a questionable offensive strategy. You try to maximize every guy's skill set. If you can do it, that's great. If you can't, well, then your offense doesn't look very good. So I've got some questions about this offense. They lose Yasmani Grandal, who is one of the best pitch framers in baseball, also had an elite walk rate. They lose Mike Moustakas. They replace, guys like Omar Narvaez, who's not a good framer, but a decent offensive catcher. They lose Derek Johnson 2 years ago. Now they lose Grandal. So I've got some questions about this pitching staff here, too. I think Brandon Woodruff will be fine. I think he will regress a little bit based on what he did last year. You put Adrian Hauser back in the rotation where he was better as a reliever than he was as a starter last year, so I wonder about that. You get Brett Anderson, who's very good when he's healthy, but he's not always healthy. You get Josh Lindblom coming over from the Korean baseball organization, and he's got a very heavy splitter, but who knows how he'll translate to the major league level. I really do like Eric Lauer, a guy they got from the Padres in the Trent Grisham deal. I like Eric Lauer. It's a guy with a lot of innings under his belt already at 24, but this is a Milwaukee rotation that's going to pitch to contact, try to stay off the barrel, and they've had success with this here over the last couple of years, but without Derek Johnson last year, everything kind of fell apart a little bit, and that does concern me some with this Brewers team here for this season. The bullpen has a wide range of outcomes. Josh Hader's very, very good. I think Freddie Peralta's skill set plays up in the bullpen. If Corbin Burns ever figures it out, Corbin Burns has the elite type of raw stuff that could make him one of the best setup guys in Major League Baseball, if not one of the best closers in Major League Baseball, to where maybe Josh Hader becomes your fireman guy and kind of comes into any situation where you need him. Here's the thing. This is a Brewers team that last year was on an 82-win pace before September. And they went 20-7 in September without Christian Yelich. I didn't expect that to happen. I was stunned that they made it into the wild card. But what do you do with this team? They were 89-73 last year and +3 in run differential. So they are more like an 82-80 type of team. I think regression is coming. That being said, the market's getting really low on this team. The under is juiced. I saw an 81.5 in the Westgate season wins pool. I lean under here, but I've been thinking about this one a lot lately. For the purposes of the guide, it was under 83.5. Not to say that I would go over with this team, but I'm kind of wondering now if people are getting too low on an organization that is very, very smart, finds ways to maximize its pieces and parts. I wonder a little bit about this team. I'm going to do a lot more studying of the Brewers here as we get closer to the season, but for now, the lean is under, but not anything nearly strong enough to be a bet. Running over a little bit here with some of these teams, but fortunately, I can catch up a little bit with the Pittsburgh Pirates because their season win total 69.5 here. This organization was a mess, and they cleaned house. They fired their team president. They fired their GM. They fired their manager. Now they bring in Derek Shelton, who was the bench coach for Kevin Cash down in Tampa Bay. He was also a hitting coach for the Indians when Kevin Cash was the bench coach there, or the bullpen coach, for Terry Francona. You had the Starling Marte trade. They lose Felipe Vasquez to prison. This Pirates team, I liked this Pirates team last year, and I got burned by this Pirates team last year. They just weren't any good. And they were a 500 team going into the All-Star break. They were 44-45, but they went 25-48 in the second half. It was a toxic environment, and I didn't realize just how bad it was and how bad things could have gotten. They didn't make any moves of great confidence here, or great consequence, heading into the 2020 season. They have one of the lowest opening day payrolls in recent memory. This is a contact-based lineup, but they don't hit for a lot of power beyond a guy like Josh Bell. So that definitely worries me quite a bit about this team in an era where power production is just so much more important than it ever has been. Home runs are up, doubles, triples. If you're a slap-hitting team, hit a bunch of singles, it just doesn't really work for you. And this is a Pirates team that doesn't have very much contact quality. They don't have a lot of guys that hit the ball hard. You got a guy like Brian Reynolds, who last year ran a .387 batting average on balls in play. Not sure how repeatable that is. One of the guys who does have better contact quality in this lineup, but this lineup is not very good beyond a guy like Josh Bell. If Gregory Polanco can stay healthy, that would help. But not a whole lot to like about this lineup. And the pitching staff so far is kind of a mess. Jameson Taillon's going to miss the year with Tommy John surgery. Stephen Brault, Chad Kuhl, those are guys that have already been banged up here in spring training. Chris Archer is still trying to figure it out. I've never been on the Archer train. He's always been that guy with high ERAs, better peripherals, lower FIP, lower XFIP, lower Sierra. He just doesn't have a good command profile to me. I've never liked Chris Archer. I don't see why I would start now. The couple guys I do like here, 23-year-old Mitch Keller is a guy that I like. I think Mitch Keller could have a breakout type of season. The stuff is very, very good. Health has always been a question for him, as it has been for a lot of the young arms that the Pirates have tried to bring up through the system. But Keller's got good stuff, good upside, good potential. And Joe Musgrove. I still like the stuff for Joe Musgrove. I still like the command profile, even a little bit of a velocity increase here in spring training. But Musgrove, a guy that's been hurt, the shoulder's already acting up. He's a positive regression candidate from a left-on-base percentage standpoint, especially if he sees some strikeout increases, but he has to stay healthy. And to this point, he really hasn't been able to do that too well. And again, just one of those guys that doesn't seem to be capable of maximizing his potential. Maybe a new regime here with Pittsburgh will allow him to do that. The bullpen's got a lot of stuff, guys. Keone Kela, Kyle Crick, Chris Stratton. These are guys that grade well in the spin rate department. I overshot this bullpen last year because I do like the raw stuff, the raw potential. Vasquez was very good, but it was just an uncomfortable situation. Kayla had problems with everybody. Crick, his season ended when he punched Vasquez and they got into a fight. Now things should be a little bit better for the Pirates, but still, this is just a team lacking talent. And they're in a division where there's 4 teams that could conceivably be 500 or better. So the Pirates, you've got to look under with them. I think there are some bright spots, but on the whole, just not a whole lot of things to get too excited about. Finally here, the St. Louis Cardinals. Their season win total 87.5. Already bet the under on this one at 88.5. There's been a lot of under steam on the Cardinals. Their season win total is juiced heavily to the under. They got a very low PECOTA projection a couple of weeks ago. And there's been a growing sentiment of doubt about this team anyway, for a variety of different reasons. First of all, last year, this was a team on a 500 pace. And then Jack Flaherty went nuclear in the second half. 0.91 ERA, 222 FIP, 319 XFIP, almost a 34% strikeout rate, 4.1 FWAR in the second half for Jack Flaherty, which is a good full season for a lot of guys. And that was the second half that he had. But beyond Jack Flaherty, what do we get in this rotation? Miles Mikolas is already hurt. He's a league average type of guy anyway. Adam Wainwright, league average or below. They're going to stretch out Carlos Martinez as a starter, so we'll see how that experiment goes. Alex Reyes is a guy that always has a lot of upside, but he's been hurt. You've got Dakota Hudson, extreme ground ball guy, doesn't miss a lot of bats, doesn't have a great walk rate. He's kind of a BABIP-dependent type of guy. They bring over Kwon Hung Kim. You wonder what he's going to look like here coming over from Asia. The Asian pitchers, it's always iffy. You've got guys like Miles Mikolas and Josh Lindblom that, at least pitched in North America. You get some of these Japanese or Korean import type guys like Yu Darvish have been pretty good. A guy like Yusei Kikuchi last year was not good at all. Masahiro Tanaka, he's had his seasons where he's been very good. So it's kind of a mixed bag. You don't always know what you're going to get from these Asian import pitchers. And a guy like Kim here, I just don't know. You can look at the numbers, and they were pretty good. Obviously, if they weren't good, he wouldn't be coming over to North America with an MLB contract. But you just don't know. You're just not sure what you're going to get. Guys like Hyunjin Ryu have been good. Kenta Maeda's have been good. Stuff like that. You don't know what you're going to get here. And really, you don't know what you're going to get as a whole behind Jack Flaherty. And what happens here is that you may see some weakness with the bullpen. Andrew Miller is already broken. That's not really a big surprise. But Carlos Martinez, if he actually gets slotted into the rotation, that lowers the upside for the bullpen. And I do like this bullpen. I think Giovanni Gallegos is very good. John Gant is solid. John Brebbia, very solid as well. They've got a lot of capable arms, but who fits where? Where do these puzzle pieces come together for this Cardinals team? I'm not exactly sure. And what makes that doubly concerning is that this offense is not good at all. This is a below average type of offense. You know, Paul Goldschmidt last year in the 70th percentile in exit velocity, 72nd percentile in hard hit rate. Is the aging curve arriving early for Paul Goldschmidt? Was there some sort of underlying injury, something like that? There are a lot of concerns about Paul Goldschmidt, and Paul Goldschmidt needs to be really good in the middle of this lineup because this is a lineup that's getting older. It's getting less productive. You're lucky that Dexter Fowler bounced back last year and had a good season. You're lucky that Tommy Edman carried a high BABIP. You're lucky that Colton Wong is a guy that can use his speed and his contact to get on base. But Matt Carpenter just doesn't look good. You know, Matt Carpenter doesn't look like a bounce back guy. I worry about Yadier Molina. They got a lot of guys in their 30s here. This Cardinals team is aging out of its prime and doing so in a hurry. So you need this pitching staff to be really good. You need this pitching staff to stay healthy and carry this team. I don't know if that happens this year. It happened last year with Flaherty and with the bullpen being very good in the second half. This was a 500 team at the All-Star break. And all of a sudden in the second half, they took off. I think they were, 47-24 or something like that in the second half. They took off. And I think this Cardinals team is a lot closer to that 500 team we saw in the first half than the team that won, 90, 91 games and got into the playoffs and even won a series when they got there. I think this Cardinals team could be one of the worst that we've seen in a while. So I'm on the under 87.5 here. And again, if you've got a league average offense and a top 10 pitching staff, you can get there. And if this offense is league average, the Cardinals have a chance to get there. I just don't see that being the case. I don't see the pitching staff being as good. So under 87.5 for the Cardinals. If you find one that's reasonably juiced, I still like it at that number. But again, a lot of negative sentiment, a lot of steam coming in against this Cardinals team. Once again, the Five and Fly segment here for Monday will be the National League West. I got a lot of thoughts on those 5 teams, so make sure that you tune in for that. We'll finish up this Bettor's Box segment here, taking a look at some injury updates from around Major League Baseball. And we start with the Yankees, as it seems like we've done on pretty much every one of these Bettor's Box segments here. Aaron Judge, shoulder issues, pectoral issues. It's been such a bad offseason in spring training for the Yankees here. Paxton, at least it looks like his timeline has been accelerated a little bit, could come back in early May. That would definitely help the Yankees out quite a bit. But Judge, Stanton already. We'll see what else happens with this lineup. Aaron Hicks still trying to come back from Tommy John surgery. Some guys that are sort of journeymen or minor leaguers had really big years last year. You wonder about the repeatability of that. I don't know about this Yankees team going into the season. I did mention I like their over for the guide, but with each passing day, with each bit of news that we get about this Yankees team, more and more worries popping up, to say the least. We stay in the AL East here. We talk about the Boston Red Sox. It's a left flexor strain for Chris Sale. So it's not the UCL, which is allegedly okay, but he's going to wind up missing a month plus of the regular season. And who knows, it could end up being more. He's probably going to be out until at least early to mid-May now. This was already a Red Sox team with a lot of pitching concerns. Eduardo Rodriguez is a guy that's been in the trainer's room a lot. The bullpen just doesn't look all that great to me. Now you get Sale out for about a month. Concerns, lots of concerns. And I mentioned this on the show that, they were talking about Chris Sale and his illness and this and that. I thought that was a deflection to keep people from worrying about the health of his arm. Maybe that was the case. So Chris Sale going to be brought along very, very slowly here, probably miss a month to 6 weeks of the season. And who knows, it could end up being more than that. But the Red Sox did sign Colin McHugh. Colin McHugh was waiting around for a guaranteed major league deal. He got one now. He'll be brought along a little bit slowly. I do like Colin McHugh. I don't like Colin McHugh as much as a starter. So it doesn't really change the projection for me too much about Boston. Still a team that I just don't like a whole lot. And in fact, when I saw that Sale was going for an MRI to be looked at by James Andrews and looked at again by Ella Tracci, I bet the under 84.5 with the Red Sox here. I guess is a team that could really bottom out this season. We go out to the National League West here. Tyler Beede of the Giants, a flexor sprain and a UCL sprain. Now, they're saying it's a 75% attachment of the UCL. So they're probably going to try rehab before they try Tommy John. And look, to me, if I'm Tyler Beede and I think there's a chance of Tommy John, I'd probably do it simply because I can be back by the middle of next season. If you wait and try to rehab this for 2 months or something, all of a sudden that takes away all of 2021 too. So hoping for the best for Tyler Beede, but the Giants were a team I already slapped a low ceiling on. I've already bet under their season win total. Beede is a big loss because he was one of the few upside guys they had in that rotation. Now he's going to be out for the foreseeable future, and who knows, it could be even longer than that if his ligament doesn't respond to treatment and rest. So Tyler Beede, that's a big loss for the Giants, a team that already didn't have a lot of prospects anyway. Griffin Canning going for a second opinion on his MRI for the Los Angeles Angels. That's not great. Also, Felix Pena coming back from a torn ACL. He's behind schedule, too. He'll probably be out until May. The Angels are a very worrisome team because they don't have a lot of great depth. Canning, one of the upside guys in that rotation, looks like he's going to be out for a while. Big concerns out there in Los Angeles. Other concerns in the AL West as well. Yordan Alvarez for the Astros having some knee issues already. That's a concern. You know, a lot of times you think about hitters, you think about upper body strength, but the lower half and the core generate a lot of power. Alvarez already dealing with these knee issues. We know he's not a DH type of guy, or we know he's not an outfielder type of guy. He's an everyday DH kind of guy. That one worries me here for the Astros. So Yordan Alvarez, keep an eye on this one because the Astros are going to win this year by outscoring teams. Their pitching staff is not great at all. They have to score a lot of runs this year to get over that season win total. I think they're plenty capable of doing it with the offense that they have, but Alvarez needs to be a key cog in the middle of that lineup. He may be the best pure hitter on that team with his power, with what he's able to do hitting the ball as hard as he does. This is a concern for the Astros, and if they get some more of these here, or Alvarez is going to miss some time, I'm going to have to switch my gear here and maybe look at the under for Houston. I still like the over 94.5 as of now. But again, if cluster injuries start to pop up on offense, that will lower their projection for me quite a bit. Finally, out in the AL West, A.J. Puck of the Oakland A's has a shoulder strain. It's termed as mild, but anytime you talk about a guy that's had the injury luck of A.J. Puck, that's concerning to say the least. So this is a bummer. I'm worried about this. One of the things I liked about Oakland was the upside of that rotation with guys like Puck, with guys like Jesus Luzardo. Now Puck already on the shelf. You really hope Luzardo's able to stay healthy. But again, you got to watch for these things here in spring training because they will have an impact on the ceilings that you place on some of these teams. I'll update some more injuries and talk about the NL West here on the Monday edition of Bang the Book Radio. Make sure you check out my MLB betting guide over at bangthebook.com in PDF form, and also the 2020 MLB betting season preview over on Amazon. And make sure you check out that deep dive segment I did with Whale Capper and Andy. That's making the rounds here today. A lot of fun on that segment, a lot of good insights. They ask a lot of good questions on that show as well. So I'm really excited here. 3 weeks to go until opening day.